now that you've made it to retirement, what is it that you want it to actually look like? What does my vision look like? What are my goals and how much is it going to cost me to get there? Is if our clients can't communicate what their goals are, it's very hard for us to come up with a plan.
How about the transition into, here's all the money I've made that I get to start drawing from? What does that even look like?
That sounds like the exciting part, right?
Yeah, of course. I want to go
Tell
pay
me
off the
something
cabin
good
and buy some vehicles,
Yep.
right? All the things.
Yep. Well, and that's where we start the descension side. As we start the downhill side, that's where we get to have some fun. And it really should be a fun and exciting thing. They talk about the golden years of retirement. Well, Kristalina, we talk about the phases of retirement. And we believe there's 3 phases. We call them the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. In those go-go years, that's typically from 60, 65 through your mid-70s, where you get to go out and have fun. You get to go and do those bucket list items like Tom, who's out traveling to Africa, and your dad who's traveling and having fun and rafting the river. Those are those fun years of retirement. And we really want to make sure that people are embracing it and enjoying it, because eventually we're going to hit those slow-go years. And that's usually, for many, it's in their early 70s through their early 80s, where they can still go. They can go play with the grandkids. They can travel. But it just takes a little longer to recover. They're not able to bounce back as quick as they used to, or at least it takes a little longer to go and do those things. Mm-hmm. And then there's the no-go years, where, again, for most, that's somewhere in their early 80s and on. That's still a great time for retirees, but it's a different phase of retirement. Mm-hmm. And we've got to prepare for that. And as we talk about financial planning, again, on the accumulation side of the mountain, we've focused on growth and accumulation. But on the descension side, on the downhill side of retirement, we've got to focus on preservation of your capital, of your money. You've got to look at income. How can I create income and start spending that money down? And that's a totally different approach than what you've been doing for the previous 40 years. Mm-hmm. And that's where, again, as Brooke shared, you've got to lower your risk. You've got to reallocate to more conservative investments. There are products out there that are called annuities. That annuities are designed in order to create a source of income in and through retirement that won't outlast you, and that can leave an inheritance or leave money for your family if that's something you'd like to do. So it's an important step as you make that transition from accumulation into retirement.
Okay. So we have annuities we need to be mindful of. What else do we need to have on our radar as we're making that descension?
I would say with that, not to piggyback off the annuity, but to piggyback on the decision making. I think that something that is misconstrued a little bit is, what are you, now that you've made it to retirement, what is it that you want it to actually look like? We always want our clients to spend their money. We're like, hey, we love you. We don't really love your kids. Please spend your money. I'm sure their kids are fine, but we don't know them. We're just saying, hey, whatever you want retirement to look like, we want to help facilitate that. You want to travel? Yeah. Let's get you traveled. If you can afford it, let's make it happen, right? You worked hard. Spend this money. Let us help you spend it wisely. But we do have clients, and I mentioned them before, that their goal is not to spend that money. Their number one priority is to leave that money for their family. They will frugally live because that's the way they've always lived. They don't want to do anything elaborate, but they will die happy knowing that their kids and grandkids are taken care of. And so those really need to be things that you're really thinking about. And if you have a partner, that partner needs to be on the same page. What are our primary goals in retirement? Because that's the part about being a financial advisor that's very difficult, is if our clients can't communicate us what their goals are, it's very hard for us to come up with a plan. Or we come up with a plan and then that plan is not abided by, and then it does derail our plan, right? Yeah. And so prior to getting into the nitty gritties of where to put money and those type things, the foundation is, what does my vision look like for retirement? What are my goals, and how much is it going to cost me to get there?
Okay. Yeah. Do I want to travel, right? Mm-hmm. All over the world, or stay home? Or is every day now like a weekend where I'm, going out for coffee and eating out for lunch and eating out for dinner, right? Those look very different.
Yeah. And I think once we get that foundation built, then we can pull in, okay, perfect. Well, your annuity is going to fulfill this part. This is going to fulfill your monthly income part, potentially.
Okay.
And this part is going to be your liquid money. This will be your place. It's like, hey, it's making money, but if you call me and you need to buy a new car or you want to take a trip, this is where we're going to pull from here. And maybe that 3 to 5 year money, you don't know if you're going to go to Europe, but maybe you want to go. Well, let's save for it. Let's make that money grow. And I'm going to elbow you when you get into my office. I'm going to make sure you go. So that, again, there's tons of vessels, lots of vehicles, wonderful places that we can put money to accomplish a mission. We got to know what your mission is.
Yeah.
I would love to say that financial planning is a science. It's not. It's an art form. And with financial planning, you have to build a house. And just as with a house, you have a foundation, you have walls, a roof, bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. They all play specific functions. And so as Brooke was saying, there's certain investments that are going to be very safe, very conservative. They'll create income to help augment or complement your Social Security income in and through retirement. Then there's that slush fund account, that play money. Maybe it's the man cave of the house where you get to have some fun. Well, that's the money that you travel with. That's the money you get to go buy a sports car in retirement. But you've got to make sure that it's properly positioned, and each dollar is going to have a specific function as part of our financial plan. Now, in retirement, there's traditional IRA money. There's Roth IRA money. There's money that you'll be taxed on, and there's money that you won't be taxed on. And so it's also part of that retirement phase is how do you spend down the money, and what money do you spend down? A lot of clients we'll work with, they'll look at doing what are called Roth conversions, where we'll take money that's sitting in a traditional IRA account that is a pre-taxed account, meaning that you'll pay the taxes when you draw it out.
Yeah.
And that can cause some real issues in retirement. By age 73, the government requires you to start taking money out of the traditional IRA account. And so for us, we often will work with clients early in their retirement, in their early 60s, where we'll start transitioning money from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA to give them tax-free money so they can use those dollars more freely later in life. And so there's lots of tools, there's lots of strategies that many people just aren't aware of. And that's where Brooke and I come in. We try to be educators. We try to help make sure that they're informed so they can make informed decisions.
So how often are people meeting with their financial advisors on average in that dissension period? More than once a year?
Yeah, and especially at those important transition phases, we're going to meet with them more.
Okay.
Going back to our Mount Everest story, and spoiler alert, we're going to get morbid for a second. I know we're all children of the 80s and the 90s, but if you remember, there were bright colors. That was the exciting thing, bright neon colors. And there was a hiker back in the early 90s that passed away on the descension, coming down from the summit of Mount Everest at a place just south of what's called the Hillary Steps, a really difficult portion of the summit, the death zone. And he passed away, and he passed away just right off the trail. And the reason that he's so important is the boots he was wearing were bright neon green. And so he's now become known as Green Boots. And every hiker that has hiked Mount Everest in the last 30 years has passed Green Boots. They know where they're at on the mountain because they know where Green Boots is. And so there's important milestones that we've got to make sure we're hitting. And so in that transition phase, yes, our clients are meeting with us on a much more regular basis. Again, at 65, there is a crucial decision that has to be made, and that's Medicare. Now, Medicare is a complicated, messy thing. And that would be another person that we'd recommend that you get on your team, is a Medicare expert or specialist, a Medicare guru that knows Medicare inside and out. Brooke and I are dangerous enough that we know our way around, but it's not our area of expertise. And so with Medicare, at 65, you have what are called the A, B, C's, and D's of Medicare. Part A and B is what we've referred to as traditional Medicare. And that's what you've always paid into. You've had your deductions as you've been working. You've been paying into Part A and B. But that only covers 80% of your medical cost in retirement. And so you have to sign up for what's called a Medicare supplement plan or a Medicare Advantage plan in order to cover the other 20%. About 20 years ago, my mother had breast cancer. And through chemotherapy and all of the things that she had to do, she lost all of her hair. And when it came back really curly. My mom had beautiful long hair. It came back really curly. And so she calls it her $500,000 perm. And, if you're responsible for 20% of $500,000 of medical cost, that can bankrupt and completely blow up your financial plan.
Absolutely.
As you're making that transition. And so you've got to make sure that you sign up for the right Medicare plan so that your healthcare costs are covered in and through retirement.
So as we're looking at stories like that, is an HSA another vehicle that you can rely on as you're in those retirement years that we should have thought about back when we were ascending?
Absolutely. I think HSA is a undervalued tool that it's not in lights everywhere. Like it's not on TikTok, right? No one's talking about HSAs they are talking about Roths, by the way, someone told me, but they're not talking about HSAs. But it is a very powerful tool because it has great tax advantages. So putting the money in, you let it grow tax free. If you use it for medical purposes, you don't have to pay the taxes. I mean, there are multiple layers of tax advantages in an HSA that similar to IRAs and 401ks and all retirement vessels, there's limits that are set by the IRS in regards to how much we can put in. But again, it's about planning for the unexpected. But I would almost say healthcare expected, right? I mean, that's really something that you will be spending money on. But when you go to speak with your Medicare person, that would be something that I would bring to them and say, hey, this is how much money I have saved in my HSA that I would prefer to spend on medical, right? That's where I get my most advantage out of it. What is your recommendation for what plan to go with? If you never share that, hey, I have $50,000 or $100,000 in an HSA, that's going to impact their decision or what they're going to push you towards. And so when we're thinking about Sherpas and the people we're gathering together, they are only as good as the information that we provide them. Think about a doctor. I have had ankle surgery and I've had 2 children. I'm sure the ankle surgeon could probably deliver my children, but I don't know if that's my best bet, right? I don't think actually I'd want my OBGYN operating on my ankle. Could they get me through it and still be alive? Probably, but that's not really their area of expertise. And so, Stephen joked about us not being attorneys. 100% we're not. We look at legal documents just like you do. We don't know, ask an attorney. But can we get through it together? Probably, but are we the ones that are best suited? No, we want a family of people that care about you wrapped around you in a nice little bow. We want your people at your local credit union. We want your CPA. We want your financial advisor. We want your estate attorney. We want all the people that love you that can pour into you in their area of expertise so you have a total package. That would be ideal.
Okay. And can you help me find those additional people if I come to my financial advisor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, and that's the benefit is that we do this every day. You don't. And so we have trusted individuals that we've worked with, that we've had clients go and work with, that have come back and given us feedback. And unfortunately, there's some that have not met our expectation. And so we don't use them anymore. We don't refer to them, or we don't encourage our clients to work with them. But we've been able to, over a long period of time, find individuals who are at the top of their industry, just like we are, in order to find the best. And then we refer our clients to work with the best.
I love that. Going back to our milestones, right? We've hit our green boots maybe at age 65, right? With Medicare. What are some of those other milestones we need to be aware of as we come down?
Yeah. And we talked about Social Security earlier.
Yeah.
Making sure that we're signing up for Social Security at the right time. And then again, just to revisit it, 67 is the new 40. It's the new exciting age. 67 is full retirement age. That's when you should plan on retiring to maximize your Social Security benefit. You can start as early as 62, but you're going to take a 5% penalty per year the earlier you draw. And so you've got to be really careful about that milestone, because once you make that decision, you can't go back. Now, I'd love to share, and this is something I think a lot of people misunderstand about Social Security. So my wife and I, we've got 4 children. My wife works a lot harder than I do. She just doesn't get paid for it. She's home with our babies. And so she, early in our marriage, she worked and had enough credits that she qualifies for Social Security. But where I've continued to work, I've made more money. My Social Security benefit should be substantially more than my wife's. And so when you qualify for Social Security, a spouse is able to do what's called a spousal benefit. And so I can go and sign up for Social Security at age 67 or at 63 or 65. My wife, she can go and sign up for her own Social Security or 50% of my Social Security, whichever is higher. And that doesn't impact my Social Security. She can file before I do. I can file before her. It doesn't matter that order of filing, but she's able to make sure to maximize her benefit from the higher Social Security. That's also the same for divorced individuals. If you've been married to a former spouse for at least 10 years and you're not remarried, you're able to go and file for your former spouse's Social Security, the 50% spousal benefit, or your own, whichever is greater. And again, it doesn't impact the ex-spouse, it doesn't impact your Social Security, but that's an option that many people are unaware of. Another milestone that's really important is the big age of 73.
Okay.
And that's when qualified charitable distributions start in. And that's a big deal because there are incredible tax savings for those who take advantage or like to make as part of their retirement plan philanthropic or charitable donations.
So the required minimum distribution starts, or RMD, and I love it when people call. They're like, it used to be 70 and it's kind of amped up, right?
Yeah.
Those numbers, if you think you know a number, just wait till the next year, it will change.
It'll change.
So go
Okay.
irs.gov. It's a great resource to look at. But we have people call all the time. They say, hey, I turned 70 this year. Don't I have a RMG, an RMD? I'm like, an RMD? Yes, you do, but not this year. It's a required minimum distribution, and that starts when you're 73. So that required minimum distribution, our government says, hey, Stephen, Kristalina, we love you, but you haven't paid taxes on this traditional money. And before you die, we want to make sure you pay taxes on it. And so they have this wonderful calculation of each number, what you need to distribute to yourself so they can get their piece of the pie. So for some, let's just take a client who has $1 million in traditional IRA assets. Let's say that 73, it's 4%. So they have to take out $40,000 that year to satisfy their required minimum distribution. Some clients may say, hey, great, I just went on a big trip and I want to use that to replenish my emergency savings account. Some may say, I am accumulating money already. I don't need that. I'll pull it out. I'll pay the taxes, but I want to reinvest it in a non-retirement account, a non-qualified account. Some, and I can't wait for this stage of my life. I hope it's still written into law that I can do this. But at age 70, you can start doing what's called a qualified charitable distribution, which means I can take money out of my traditional IRA and I can gift it to a nonprofit. And so I can take it out, chip away at some of that traditional IRA money, not pay taxes on it, but gift it to something that's very important to me. And so, one thing we kind of bounce around and say, well, this is when most people think about it, but you should be thinking about it way back here on going up the mountain.
Yeah.
This again is where that Sherpa, when you start contributing to those 401ks or those IRAs when you're 20, 30, 40, you're going to ask them, hey, should I do Roth or traditional? And they're going to help you decide which one. And then you're really going to pay the consequences of that on the descent side, because if you have this large traditional account that you now have to pay a bunch of taxes on, it could be pretty brutal. And so, we think about, hey, RMDs are when you're 73, but are we thinking about RMDs from 60 to 73 and saying, hey, in 13 years, I'm going to have a pretty hefty tax bill if I have this big chunk I have to now take out every year. Would it be advantageous for me to start chipping away at that, over the next 10, 15 years so that tax liability isn't so great when the IRS is requiring me to take out?
Okay. So you've got to think about this all along that journey.
So yeah, again, to go back, you've asked a couple times, how often should I be talking to my financial advisor? I obviously like to talk. Call me all the time. I would love to talk to you. But when you make decisions all along the way, you need to be speaking to someone, right? At the beginning, how do I invest? Traditional or Roth? How much do I invest? I don't know. Let's look at your overall, financial health. What about, 10 years out from retirement? What do I do? What are my missteps? I mean, this is like a living, breathing document. This is your life, and we want to be part of all the decisions. We have multiple clients that call and they say, hey, I want to buy a new house. Where can I pull the money from? Should I get a home equity? Do I have assets I can get that the tax penalty won't be huge? I want to buy a new car. I want to take a vacation. We don't necessarily see those clients in those conversations. We have multiple phone calls to walk them through to make sure that what they want to do to the plan, well, where's the best part to do that within your plan? And so I hope that all financial advisors feel the same way that we feel, but if we don't hear from you, we're going to be tracking you down because we want to be in the know to make sure that you're successful in the plan that we all came up with.
Stephen and Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, and thanks to all of you for joining as well. And we will see you on the next episode of Guiding You Forward.